This video was brought to you by CuriosityStream. Sign up now and you'll get our streaming service Nebula absolutely free, where you can get exclusive TLDR videos and an extended version of our new show, The Daily Briefing. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, now in its 7th week, has clearly upended the European security order, with Putin pushing many countries to re-evaluate their military and defensive positions. Germany, for instance, has hailed a new era of defense spending, bringing Europe's biggest and richest nation up to the 2% NATO defense spending targets. And speaking of NATO, yesterday Sweden and Finland's prime ministers held a joint press conference to discuss the potential of them joining the club, potentially as early as June. So in this video, we're going to look at those new reports about Finland and Sweden's accession to NATO, and how Putin might have inadvertently forced his Nordic neighbours into the alliance that he seems to hate the most. First things first, why aren't Sweden and Finland in NATO already? Well, a month or so ago, we actually put out a full video explaining that, but the crux of the matter is that there simply wasn't any need for them to sign up. Both Finland and Sweden were doggedly neutral countries, and for most of the 20th century, there were no active threats posed to their territorial integrity. And neutrality came with its advantages. It allowed both countries to curry favour with the West and the East. Finland, for example, has previously bought arms from both Russia and the West, and was an observer member in both the European Economic Community and the Soviet-led Comecon bloc in the 1970s. This, of course, all changed since Russia invaded Ukraine, though. Suddenly, there was an active threat, not only to Finland and Sweden, but also to much of Eastern Europe. So this entire calculation that had led them to this neutrality no longer added up. The world order that had allowed neutrality had suddenly changed. In the eyes of much of the West, including both Finland and Sweden, Russia now poses a significant threat to their territorial integrity and the territorial integrity of their allies. In practical terms, this has already led to a significant strengthening of relations between Western nations. As we've seen across various sanction packages, the US, UK, Canada, and EU are moving in lockstep with one another, presenting a united front. And on the military side of things, NATO members have consistently reaffirmed their unwavering commitment to Article 5, which, in its simplest form, means an attack on one is considered to be an attack on all. So, in theory, Article 5 should act as a significant deterrent against invasion, because, well, even if you invade one of the smaller NATO countries, you have to fight all of NATO. And it appears that this is a commitment that both Finland and Sweden want in on, and fast. According to NATO officials talking to The Times, Russia has made a massive strategic blunder, and both countries are apparently poised to join as soon as early June. And this timeline does seem possible, given that both Sweden and Finland are carrying out security policy reviews at the moment, which are scheduled to conclude at the end of May. If these security policy reviews recommend NATO accession, then we could easily see their applications submitted by this proposed June deadline. Swedish and Finnish politicians also seem remarkably open to the idea. Magdalena Andersson, the Swedish Prime Minister, has stated that she does not want to exclude NATO membership in any way, a significant U-turn from just early March, when Andersson said that Sweden joining NATO would further destabilise Eastern Europe and increase tension. Jimmy Akerson, leader of Sweden's second largest opposition party, the Sweden Democrats, has also said that he wants his party to support NATO accession, and if he's successful in convincing his party, then there would be a parliamentary majority in Sweden for joining the alliance. When it comes to Finland, their Prime Minister has also stressed that it's time for Finland to seriously reconsider its stance on NATO, saying that Russia is not the neighbour we thought it was, and the decision to join ought to be taken thoroughly but quickly. In fact, things went even further only yesterday, when the two leaders met in Stockholm to hold a meeting and press conference on the issue of NATO membership. During the press conference, Finland's Prime Minister said that the country would decide in a matter of weeks, sticking to the suggested timeline we mentioned earlier. Well, the Swedish Prime Minister said that she was conducting a very serious analysis and expected to make a decision and potentially submit an application before the next NATO summit in June. This change in tone by politicians mirrors a similar change amongst the public in both countries. Prior to the invasion, the majority of Finns and a plurality of Swedes were opposed to NATO membership. In both countries, though, public sentiment has done a sharp 180. In late February, polling found that, for the first time ever, a majority of Finns wanted to join NATO, and the latest poll from March 30th found that 61% of Finns were in favour of joining, with just 16% opposed. And it's a similar story for Sweden. Polling from early March found that 51% of Swedes now support joining NATO, with just 27% against. Interestingly, a more recent poll found that if Finland joins, support in Sweden rises to 61%, with 17% against. Regardless of whether the countries actually join or not, it's worth noting that NATO itself is planning to adjust to the new threat posed by Russia. Before the invasion, NATO just deployed a small tripwire force on its eastern border, incapable of defending against a full-scale invasion. However, according to Jens Stoltenberg, the current NATO Secretary General, the alliance is now planning to deploy a permanent full-scale military force on NATO's external borders, capable of defending against an army. And this could change the calculus for all parties involved. Were Finland and Sweden to join, and the permanent force deployed along their border with Russia too, it might provoke Russian retaliation. This is probably a genuine concern too. When the two countries softened their position on NATO membership more generally, Russia was quick to announce that there would be serious military and political consequences, including retaliatory measures. And that's only if they join, let alone if NATO forces were to build up on their border. Putin's spokesperson repeated that threat when talking to Sky News just last week, reiterating that if either country joined the alliance, it will be considered a threat for the whole architecture of security, requiring Russia to, quote, take additional measures to rebalance the situation. That being said, the Russian army clearly doesn't have the capacity to fight against both NATO and Ukraine, and NATO and its members appear to be strongly on board with having both Sweden and Finland join the club. Sweden and Finland have actually been invited to several NATO meetings surrounding Russia's invasion, and European diplomats have highlighted how Sweden and Finland would both, in their own right, significantly beef up NATO's capabilities on the intelligence and air forces front. One European alliance diplomat said that Sweden and Finland will be real feathers in NATO's cap as net contributors. They are real players. But if you want to be updated on Russia, Ukraine, and NATO accession as it plays out, then you should subscribe to the Daily Briefing, our show where we break down the 5 stories you need to know about each day in just 5 minutes. Kind of like your daily news vitamins to get you in the know quickly. Now, if you're interested, then you can watch it on the Daily Briefing YouTube channel, or you can listen by searching in your favorite podcast app. But if you want the extended version of the show, that's an extra 10 minutes every single day and an ad-free experience, then you'll want to sign up to our streaming service Nebula. There you'll also find all kinds of exclusive TLDR videos which will never make it to YouTube, and all of our latest videos ad-free. And if you're interested, then I've got good news, because we partnered with CuriosityStream, the home of the best documentaries online. Thanks to them, you can get both streaming services. That's CuriosityStream for all the docs you could want, and Nebula for bonus TLDR for less than $15 a year. That's a wild deal, and a 26% discount on their already low price. So get yourself a ton of documentaries and exclusive content from your favorite creators, including the Daily Briefing Extended Edition, by signing up using the link below. Thanks for your support.